Yes, that is the question. We are discussing that universal or infinite existence with a unlimited or infinite force seems to be at work. And now we were trying to discuss yesterday the nature of this force that is working in universal existence, whether all that exists is surcharged with a force, but whether that force is conscious or unconscious, that was a problem, is it not? And we came to the point, I suppose, where we found that as the rhythms of the force that is working cast themselves into an ordered movement, there must be consciousness behind. Because if we grant that the force is unconscious, then the why of the force, aim, purpose, the fulfillment does not arise at all. Because an unconscious force can have no purpose, can have no end, can have no fulfillment. It could not have necessarily cast itself into harmonious rhythms of self expression. If it was absolutely unconscious, it is apparently unconscious, of course, when we look at it from the point of view of our mind and our senses, then the whole universal existence, which is independent of man, far vaster than man, appears to be apparently unconscious. But if you study the movement of the force that is at work, we find that that force seems to cast itself into rhythms of movement. A one rhythm which creates a material world, another rhythm which creates the plant world, a third rhythm which creates the insect world, a fourth rhythm which creates the animal world, fifth rhythm which creates the human world. So that it seems as if it is casting itself into cognizable rhythms by the mind, which gives to us the intuition that it must be conscious or something conscious behind it. It could not have been an unconscious force working out according to certain rhythms. And if it is a conscious force, then you can seek for why, wherefore, purpose, fulfillment, aim. If you grant that it is unconscious in spite of all that is indicative of the consciousness, well, then you need not seek a goal at all. Then human life can be without any aim, so to say, without any purpose. One need not find why, what is good, what is right, what is true, because these are not at all relevant to the working of an unconscious force. An unconscious force need not bother about whether, the consciousness that has risen out of the inconscient, the human, seek a truth and or untruth and so on. There is no meaning in it, because that would be the rise of something positive out of something negative, out of something that is unwarranted existence of the aims, values, and purposes which are seem to be operative when the rhythm casts itself into a certain mold. Well, therefore, but if we suppose that existence has a conscious being and the force as conscious, then the why is there. Why it is like that? And why the conscious force casts itself into this kind of rhythms? That question can arise if we grant it is conscious. And then we find, as we first saw in the fourth chapter, that at work in the whole universal existence, which is infinite, there is a conscious subjective Purusha, the I, a self at work, just as the human individual is secondary to the universal in which he exists, the whole universal existence of which human existence is a part. This universal and the human are a part of an I, an infinite self, of which the universe and the individual are terms of self expression. So that you see, really speaking, when you say force is conscious force, then immediately the intuition and the presence of the infinite subjective being, a self of the cosmos, comes into, well, our acceptance. We accept that yes, it is a conscious being, a subjective self, an independent entity of existence, which is the witness, which is the seer, which is perhaps the supporter also of the whole movement. Well, that becomes then a possible assumption. If existence is conscious, it has freedom to manifest and not to manifest. Therefore, the question is, if this force is conscious and there is a being or a self of this infinite conscious existence is there, it should have the freedom either to take up the process of creation or process of self manifestation or to hold himself back. Why is it that it casts itself into these universal rhythms? Why is it that the one, the self, the Purusha, one who watches and is independent of this cosmic movement of conscious force, why does he cast himself into these rhythms? It could hold itself back because it should have the freedom either to cast itself into movement or to hold himself back from movement. Well, then is the freedom to manifest or not to manifest must be inherent in this being. But it can, when you say it holds itself back from movement, it is not that it has lost all the power of movement. It holds the power back. That is to say, the movement of cosmos or creation becomes potential. When it does not manifest or throw its energy, conscious energy out and holds it back, it is a potentiality. It doesn't cease to exist. The power to manifest the rhythms of cosmic existence do not cease because they are not projected from the self of the being. The infinite conscious being can either hold the power of expression in repose or in passivity, hold as potentiality, or can activate and throw itself out into movement. Both things are possible, and therefore, even if you say that it is holding itself back, force will be always inherent in existence. Power will be there always whenever there is existence, whether manifested or not manifested. And then we can say that there is a force that is manifesting, and you say consciousness is working. Now, this consciousness that is working in the universal force, the infinite force, what kind of consciousness is it? Is it a mental consciousness? Is it a mind that is at work? Well, a mind cannot be the consciousness, or mental consciousness, however wide, cannot be the creator of the movement of cosmos. The universe cannot be the product of a mind, however wide, however universal, however great the dimensions you give to it. Because mind, by its very definition, has certain limitations which cannot go with the qualities and powers which you see in this creation. Now, is it a mental consciousness? Well, if it is a mental consciousness, then in the creation which it created, mental consciousness would have been present. But we find in the inconscient, the mental consciousness is not present. It is not of the mental type. It is not of the mental nature. The consciousness that is manifesting itself in infinite existence is a consciousness, but not a mental consciousness, not an intellectual consciousness. Because it was mental, the element of mentality would be present in all the rhythms which it casts out from itself. Well, because it is not so, therefore, the nature of that infinite consciousness, which is the essential and inherent power of infinite existence, must be other than mental consciousness. That seems to be almost axiomatic. Because the consciousness is not the rule, mental consciousness is not therefore the rule of the material universe. But it is not at all true that that consciousness is mental. We know something in us is conscious when we sleep, when mind is not active, isn't it? If the nature of that consciousness was only mental, and if all consciousness was mental, all through we would have retained our mental consciousness. Man is the only expression of this mental consciousness. And even in man, all through he does not retain his mental consciousness. When he sleeps, his mental consciousness is in abeyance. He is not conscious mentally, and still he is conscious. He is not when he sleeps, you don't say he has become unconscious, isn't it? Yes, the nature of the consciousness is not necessarily mental or intellectual. Yes. Something of it, you see, our waking state is only a selection from our whole entire conscious being. When we say our waking state is not all pervading, and that is what we talked yesterday evening when we were talking about psychology, that man's psychological being is like an iceberg. Perhaps four-fifths of it is below the surface in the subconscious, the inconscient, and perhaps one-fifth or one-fourth of it is only visible in the waking consciousness. The rest of it is there. And this one-fourth is very largely governed by that which is below. So, waking consciousness cannot be taken up as a characteristic, the whole of man's possible consciousness. The waking consciousness is only a select from a much vaster consciousness. Now, the materialist outlook says that however extended consciousness may be, it is inseparable from physical organs. This is one aspect of the thing which the materialistic outlook can put forth, and sometimes they do. That however vast your consciousness may be extended, it is inseparable from physical organs. In fact, they would go to the length of saying that it's a result of physical organs. That you become conscious is due to the physical organs being there. It is not that consciousness is there and is using the physical organs. No, because you have got eyes, therefore you have the consciousness of sight. Consciousness of sight is a result of having eyes. Yes, having a physical organism for expression, well, a consciousness attaches itself to this material organism. There is no free consciousness that is free from this organized material unit or organism which we are using. That is an argument which some people who believe, or the materialists who believe in inconscient as a basis, will give us for our consideration. It is forgotten that consciousness is not a result of brain, but consciousness is using the brain. We don't think because we have brain. Brain is only an instrument for transmission of thought, for acceptance of consciousness and decision by the consciousness whether the sensation that is received is, well, acceptable, unacceptable, pleasant, unpleasant, good, bad, desirable, and all kinds of judgments. But it is like a typewriter or a machine that is used by somebody. The machine is not the creator. You see, it would be if that was so, he says, brain does not produce consciousness. Consciousness is using the brain is not producing consciousness. Yes, this is important to note, because then in that case he would say, he gives a very fine argument. He says that the engine does not cause or explain the motive power. If you are given an engine, it does not explain the motive power. It's only a mechanism for working of a power. Power is independent of the motive, of the engine. Engine is only a mechanism created for the operation of a power. But the engine does not cause or explain the motive power either of steam or electricity. Well, in the same way, the human organism does not explain the conscious power which is working in the organism. It is only for some use, as engine is for some use by a power. Well, the physical organism, the nervous organism, the mental organism that is given to man is only for a use by a conscious power. It is not that because the engine is there, the power comes into it. No, power may not come into it, and that is what happened. That is what we call death. The engine is there, and the power is not there. Yes. The material state, you see, is the emptiness of consciousness or sleep of consciousness. When you say consciousness is all pervading. In matter, we don't see any consciousness. But it's just as when man is asleep and yet the consciousness, mental consciousness is there. In the same way, in matter also, the consciousness is present in trance, it is in mask, it has hidden itself. You can say that it is asleep, gathering in, you see, all the itself into a sort of apparent unconsciousness. And physical impact brings out the consciousness that is there. And if you watch the whole operation of this energy, which is replete with consciousness, then you will see that there are states of this consciousness. You can call conscious state, superconscious state, subconscious state, subliminal state, so that the consciousness which is operative or active or creative of the cosmos, inherently united to infinite existence, has not one aspect of its expression, one mode of manifestation. It can be to the human mind superconscious. It can be to the human consciousness something conscious. It can be to the human consciousness, well, subconscious. It can be subliminal. So these state and they operate. Remember, subliminal state is able to act independently of human senses. You need not use, well, any outer sense instrument in order to convey your thought or impulse to somebody. Now, that is an operation of consciousness, not through the instrumentality provided, but an independent action of, you can call it the subliminal, telepathy, or hypnotism, or faith cure, or the thousands of other phenomenon in which you find that consciousness acts without intervention or use of organized instrument of sensation and perception. It acts directly. So that this conscious force of which we are talking has, well, not one rhythm. It is not necessarily mental as we talk, and it is not necessarily bound to the waking condition. It has a waking state, it has a subliminal state, it has a subconscious, it has a superconscious state, and in all of which it acts. It can produce to the mind tangible results. Well, that is the nature of this subconsciousness, subliminal, and superconscious. This on a large scale, first this is seen in a sort of a, in a nutshell in man. But if you look at the cosmos and the whole of the working of this energy, then you go back to the plant life. And there in the plant and the metal, you find that there is consciousness, which to mind is subconscious, but it is there. A nervous system which corresponds to the nervous response of the waking organism of either animal or man. The animal, in the animal, the vital consciousness is there and present. It is not conscious mentally like man, but it is conscious vitally. So this cosmic consciousness, universal consciousness, which is the power of an infinite existence, works on several levels in the cosmos, and all those operations are present in man in a condensed form, in a tabloid form. Unconsciousness is there, subconscious is there, subliminal is there, vital is there, mental is there. All that as if he is the representative of the, well, macrocosm. The whole of the cosmic energies are, as it were, in a rudimentary form, in seed form, present in this human individual. But if you take your vision outside and see, then you will be able to see that this consciousness, power or conscious force, is operating in the plant world, in the metal and in the animal, in the vital, and Even sometimes you will find that even in man it works in compartmental or tight divisions. Sometimes his mind does not know what his vital is doing. That is a novel by Conan Doyle, is it not? Jekyll and Hyde. Yes, you see, that is typical of the perception of this double personality, where that same consciousness is working in one part, quite unknown to another part. Not that in every case it happens, but there are cases in which this same consciousness is operating in one level, unknown to another level in the same organism. Yes, so that this illustrates how multiple are the hierarchy or steps in which this consciousness works out, well, whatever purpose it has. We are only trying to work out that it is conscious. Consciousness is not of mental type. It is independent of mind, and it has several levels on which it manifests itself. Voilà. Yes. So consciousness is therefore present as a common element in the man, in animal, in plant, and in matter. That is conscious force of which we are talking. We are talking of that common element which works in man, in the animal, in the plant, and even in what appears to us, well, inconscient matter. That is the nature, or that is the aspect of that consciousness of which we are talking as a conscious force. This is called Chit Shakti, energy that creates the world. And when you say consciousness, it always implies knowledge, self knowledge. When you say consciousness, it always implies knowledge. It must know. Conscious cannot be without self knowledge. So that when we say this operation is of a conscious force or conscious energy, we automatically know that it must have intelligence, it must have knowledge, self knowledge. It must be therefore charged with purposefulness. It must know its purpose because of self knowledge. It knows the purpose because it knows itself. Therefore, it knows the direction of the movement. And this also is seen in the working of plant life. This energy is working in the plant, conscious of the purpose. That is why the seed invariably produces the tree which it must produce, isn't it? We see the working in animals, in an instinct where the purpose of the organism is known. So the consciousness which we talk of, as we said, implies, well, intelligence, self knowledge, self awareness, or knowledge of self existence. And self existence, therefore, well, knows the direction. And the animal, for instance, when it works, it finds its food by instinct, it knows danger by instinct, well, it protects itself, it knows where is pleasure and where is unpleasant experience. So, this vast energy that is working as conscious force is intelligent in the sense that it has self awareness or self knowledge, and therefore has the purpose or knowledge of the direction in which it must move. And this we see actually in a vast belt of its expression in the vegetable and in the animal kingdom. You can say human being can look at this working out and say that this is all right, but how much waste this energy is doing. You see, in order to produce one change in color or one change in design or in the organism, well, it takes 100 years, 200 years, and kills thousands and millions of beings before it brings about a change. It's a very wasteful method. So Sri Aurobindo replies to that by saying that that is a mental view of the working of that consciousness, is it not? You must go and identify yourself with that consciousness to know whether there is waste. Waste from your point of view, waste from the human point of view. One doesn't know whether that way of looking at the use of energy obtains there. Perhaps not. And that he very finely put in a poetic form in Savitri at one place when he says, prodigal of her rich divinity, the divine power that is working, this conscious force that is working, the Chit Shakti that is at task in the cosmos. So he says, prodigal of a rich divinity, the divinity is prodigal of it, plenty of divinity. She wastes eternity on a beat of time. She can afford to waste eternity on every beat of time. That is the richness and the plenitude of the supreme power of which we are talking. So he says, when you say waste, that's a human way of looking at a vast process where perhaps human considerations and human values have no place. They are not relevant at all. So and to the human mind, what is waste may not be the waste to the supreme consciousness. You see, and we have seen that there is therefore an intelligence and self-knowledge and a purpose at work in the working of this world force. And therefore this world force is conscious. And why does it move in the cosmic manifestation, in the world process? Well, emergence of potentialities that are in it is the object of the movement. The object is the emergence of potentialities that are in it, and these potentialities are unlimited and infinite. Therefore, the movement will be for all eternity. Now we take up the next chapter. It is the delight of existence. You have dealt with the aspect of pure existence, aspect of conscious infinity, and now the aspect of this energy. And we want now to understand what is delight. Why delight? Why this movement? Well, in the explanation of why this movement, emergence of potentialities, but why take up the task of bringing out the potentialities at all? That is the problem. And there we take up the 11th chapter now. This is the 11th chapter, isn't it? I think so. Now there he divides it into two. He says, why should this infinite energy, which is an omnipresent reality now. That was the basis. On the fourth chapter, we have established the existence of an omnipresent reality. A reality is working everywhere. Something is happening. Existence, there is being. We say plant is, stone is, hill is, river is, means exists. So there is an infinite existence, isn't it? Well, behind all this existence, there is an omnipresent reality. And that is what we are talking. Idea of it as infinite being, idea of it as not only being, but being charged with an infinite consciousness. And now, this omnipresent reality, why does it throw itself out into this creation? Why this movement of emergence of potentialities of the consciousness into worlds of form? Is it compelled? Is there a compulsion? Something irresistible and therefore it has got to do it. But then we have assumed that it is free. There cannot be any compulsion. Then why this movement takes place at all? He says the only reason that we can mentally think of is delight. Why should it move? Because of delight. So, is this movement a result of bare existence? No. Is it a result of a crude inconscient force? No. It doesn't seem, because the evidence is not there. I mean, this is not only our liking or disliking. It's not our wanting or not wanting. It is the whole cosmos is showing that to us. Is it bare existence? And we have seen it is not bare existence, because all existence is always full of consciousness. There cannot be existence without consciousness, cannot be consciousness without existence. Well, if you say consciousness is only an inconscient and crude force, no, it is conscious force. These two we have resolved by now, isn't it? So now the question remains, consciousness existence, which is bliss. It is of the aspect of delight, bliss. The three are to the human mind, well, possible to analyze and divide into compartments, but this is a mental way of looking at an infinite truth. And therefore, mind says Sat, being, consciousness here, delight here, but it is triple in its operation, triune. It is indivisible trinity. It's a trinity in which you cannot think of consciousness without delight, of delight without being, of consciousness without delight and being. It is one and indivisible existence which manifests itself as consciousness, being, and bliss. When you say conscious existence is absolute, what do we mean by that absoluteness? Because those who do not want to explain the cosmos in this way will always say that our idea was that there is a conscious existence and conscious being at work, but it is absolute. And in the absolute, there is no room for creation. In the absolute, there cannot be any possibility of creation. Well, he says, what do you mean by the absolute? There can be in the absolute illimitable bliss of conscious existence. In the absolute, you cannot negate every positive element. Then your absolute will be almost like zero or void. If you say in the existence nothing can exist, well, in the absolute, then the very absolute ceases to be absolute because it becomes something negative. In the absolute, you say being cannot exist, consciousness cannot exist, creation cannot exist, power cannot exist, substance cannot exist. You see, nothing. Then what kind of absolute it would be? It would be, how would it differ from zero? How would it differ from void? Absolute is that which is free from the limitation of all relativities. That is real absolute. Absolute is not negation of relativities. No, it is transcendence of relativities. That is absolute. So that all the relativities are included in the absolute, and yet absolute remains absolute because it is not limited by the relativities which it has manifested or which it holds within itself. You cannot say that it must have nothing in it. No, it has everything and is more than all that it holds. That is the real meaning of absolute. Well, that is what he's trying to hit at, I think. Delight. See, yes, even there are people who say that there will be delight, but delight will be when you experience self-existence, free from any movement. It would be a sort of a, stillness in which you have the delight of the supreme self-existence. Delight can be or should be invariably connected with stillness, with holding back movement, with merging into self-existence only, into consciousness only, not into movement. You see, that is one outlook which has been given in some schools of thought and philosophy. To lose forth and enjoy this infinite movement and variation of self can also be the object of delight. Delight need not be withdrawal into the pure being and consciousness and stillness. Delight also can be in the act of losing forth into unlimitedness, unlimited movement of variation, of self-delight. The self-delight can move out into, can throw itself forth into, can pour itself forth into, well, unlimited creation. Creation of objects, creation of well, its own field of expression for the sake of play of this delight. Satchidananda, endlessly enjoys the delight of variation, because all things are in their ultimate constitution that infinite being, consciousness, and bliss. And when this is explained, then two questions always come to the human mind. That if this is a play of delight, and delight is the cause of the infinite existence and consciousness throwing itself out into an unlimited play of self expression and variation, how is it that in the world there is pain? How is it that in the creation there is evil? These two questions of pain and evil always come as difficult of explanation on the basis of an infinite bliss that is at work in infinite existence and consciousness. The two questions are that of pain and evil. This pain is felt by the emotional and sensational consciousness of man and animals and beings. And the problem of evil is ethical, moral. You see, right and wrong, good and bad, high and low, true and false. Well, it is from that that the problem of evil or ethical wrong arises. Well, because in the world of pain, there is no delight. This is evident. Then he gives one argument, and this contradicts, successfully. This is the basis of Buddhistic outlook also. The whole of Buddhistic outlook, man's problem, moves around the problem of pain. Buddha gave up his house and went out of his estate simply to solve the problem of how to make man free from pain. In one sense, you will observe, one day we will have a talk on Buddhism. In fact, it's devoted to that aspect because it's a aspect which many people nowadays are taking up and thinking that it would, if applied to modern life, solve man's problem today, which I don't think is true. But there is a great contribution of Buddhism. There is such a great contribution that it deserves one full talk. But it is evident that Buddha was certainly overpowered by the aspect of pain in life. There was certainly an exaggeration in his perception of the place of pain in human scheme of things. There is no doubt about that in my mind, because as he puts it here, the sum of pleasure far exceeds the sum of pain in the cosmos. Otherwise, life will not continue. This is very simple. The sum of pleasure and enjoyment is far more than the sum of pain, because the fact that life continues is a proof of it. If the sum of pain was greater, man will begin to commit suicide, which he doesn't do in spite of whatever befalls him. You see, well, the existence of pain is there, but the place of pain which a scheme of Buddhistic outlook gives is certainly exaggerated. Man, it makes, really such an effect on the human being that he is turned from the ultimate purpose of self-fulfillment. So much he exaggerates this pain. You see, if you look at pain from a microscope, it will look very big. And that is what Buddhism does. It gives a microscope to the perception of pain, and hot pain. Oh, so much pain. Forget how much pleasure and delight also is there. Pain alone doesn't exist. But it gives such an exclusive and exaggerated idea of pain that people always are overcome, and then they say, oh, what's the use of trying to see any purpose? When that is what the existentialists are saying. Don't values have no place. Existence alone is all right. You exist somehow and insist on existing moment to moment, that's all. Moment is important, and the present is the expression of the eternal. Therefore, don't worry about any purpose and fulfillment. You are being fulfilled every minute. The present is the fulfillment of the eternal. The present is the eternal, you see. Well, these aspects, exaggerating one item or one aspect of the whole, creation, then get lopsided in the reading of the ultimate purpose. You must have a balance. And that is one of the greatest things which Sri Aurobindo's outlook gives to anybody who has an intellectual, seeking. It gives a panoramic view of the whole cosmos, not of what is, but what can be. And can be for 1,000 or 2,000 years, not today. What he says is not necessarily possible for man to achieve today. I don't mind if man doesn't do it, but it is certain that man will have to attempt that thing 500 years after, 1,000 years after, it is there. And in that scheme, there is nothing that is exaggerated. There is pain, there is pleasure, there is ignorance, there is desire, there is impulsive, there is subconscious, there is conscious, there is superconscious, and there is that conscious force and existence and delight all the time working in everything that you see. And you can open to that and give expression to the movement of that in this working out. That is the solution. So nothing changed. And yet everything so radically altered in value that there is a complete revaluation. Once you are open to that consciousness, then universe remaining externally the same, the revaluation has changed the whole thing radically. It becomes a play of the delight and bliss. Just see, that is what he is trying to say. Just now, that don't look upon it as if it was only a field of pleasure, pain in which man was submitted to, unmerited suffering. The Vedic aspect of this problem was quite different. The Vedic rishis never overrated the place of pain in human life. They always said, you see, Shatanjive Masharada. Let us live 100 winters. The life that is given to us by the gods. Deva hitam yadayuhu. The life given to us by the gods, let us live 100 winters. And how? Then you will say, well, the hymn says that looking at the cosmos and trying to reach the solar light, worshipping the sun of illumination, let us live 100 winters. Let us hear something harmonious through our ears. Bhadram karne vishrunuyam. Bhadram pashyema. Let us see things beautiful with our vision, with our sight. You see, sthirai rangai, keeping our bodies in good health. Let us enjoy the span of 100 winters given to us by the gods. That is the hymn. Now that is the Vedic outlook. It never overlooked pain, but it never exaggerated pain also. Its pain is there, but this also is there. And this is the purpose, this is a more positive purpose. So did the Upanishads say always. Ananda deva khalu vimani bhutani jayante. All the beings that you see, all the existence are born from bliss and delight. In delight they remain, and to delight they return. Well, that is the outlook of the Upanishads. It is only when Buddha came on the scene of, the cultural life of the world, that this exaggeration of this temporary aspect of pain was raised to such a place that probably the whole outlook became a little bit lopsided. There is no doubt about it. And here now he is answering the sum of pleasure, you see, far exceeds the sum of pain in existence. We don't see joy, we say. Bliss is not seen in human life. Well, he says that there are three aspects of it. It can be either active, it can be passive, it can be on the surface, or it can be underlying. And most often, this delight of existence is underlying, and man takes it for granted. He never thinks that to exist is an act of delight. He is already enjoying delight when he exists. You see, a man, when he is in good health, never feels, I have good health. No, it's only when he gets something which is not good health, he says, yes, I have pain. The positive aspect he took it for granted. He never thought it was something positive. No. Yeah, pain is a negative element in human life. Even when it comes, it is never accepted as natural, you see. And this all pervading bliss is such that man doesn't feel it. It's like the air we breathe, and we don't say, don't feel that we live because there is air. Nobody thinks of air at all when he lives, but we actually depend upon it. It is all the time, everywhere, all pervading, and it supports life. Man never is conscious. The same with regard to the bliss that is all pervading, and man never knows it. He knows it only when there is a breach in it and says, "This is pain. Oh, that must go." So that there are three steps: pleasure, pain, and neutral indifference. And this neutral indifference is a state in which one does not feel the existence of that all pervading delight. And man always feels underlying pressure which is there. Pain is always to man's consciousness a temporary and contrary occurrence to that delight. Pain is never accepted as a welcome guest. You see, it is always something that is contrary and temporary occurrence. It must go. You don't say pain should be there all the time. No, nobody, not even the animal. They know, nobody thinks, living creature never think of pain as if it was a necessary and a desirable an element to be continued. It's a temporary occurrence. Pleasure is normally taken for granted. Pain is abnormal. Pain affects us more intensely because it is abnormal. Delight does not affect us so much as pain because pain is abnormal to our very constitution and being. It is experienced as an outrage on our very existence. Existence should be without pain. That is how we take for granted. So, least intermittence of pain is felt as if it's an outrage on our very being. That is why people exaggerate. And that is why Buddha also exaggerated this aspect. Now, but then you can ask the question, why pain at all? That problem remains. Why should there be suffering and pain at all in a scheme of a being, omnipresent reality, which is infinite existence, consciousness, and bliss? That is the problem. And then he says, it is that which is the author of existence, how he created pain and evil. He is, if he is a God Almighty, and if he creates pain, then you can say he is cruel, isn't it? That is, in Sanskrit language, they say that such a God, when you give him omnipotence, and if you also ascribe to him or make him responsible for suffering and pain, then Vaishamya Nairgrunya, they will say that he is partial and cruel, both. See, he is partial and cruel less than the human being, because some human beings are not cruel and are very strict in their judgment, so that are very impartial. Well, God would be less than his own creation. How he has created this pain, and if he is deliberately cruel, then he is less than his own creation, man. Well, well, who created pain, when pain was created, and why pain was created? Put the question in that way. And in trying to get answer to this question, Sri Aurobindo says that you must forget the idea of God as an extra cosmic being. Because if you believe God as somebody who is away from cosmos and universe which he has created, like a potter who has created a pot, so he is not in the pot, and all the imperfections of the pot, well, are because of his being unable to create or creating, deliberately like that. Well, that aspect is wrong. To believe in a God who is extra cosmic, away from the creation which he has brought into existence, would not lead you to the correct solution of this question. So, when you see pain, then you say, he has made us suffer, is it not? Or he has made man subject to pain. But when you know that, oh, it is omnipresent reality that is this world, then you say, how is it that he has inflicted pain on himself? That is the correct way of putting it. You understand? Yes, the problem is not why he is subjecting us to pain, but how is it that an omnipresent reality an infinite being, consciousness and bliss, which is the world becoming, how is it that he inflicts on himself what we as human beings feel as pain and suffering? That is the correct way of putting the question. And he says, then there is some answer possible. Therefore, the God of this world is not a moral God. Please note, therefore. He is superior to moral consideration and values of man. No explanation on that is possible. Therefore, we take all is he, and it is he who bears the evil and suffering. He who bears the load of evil and suffering. And then that will partly explain the phenomenon of incarnation. Why the divine incarnates in the human? Because he bears the load first as an infinite being, consciousness and bliss. And when the load is here in man as pain and suffering, he comes back into the human in order to show how to bear it and how to overcome it. Well, that gives you, opens a door to the explanation of the phenomenon of incarnation. But that's apart. Just now we are not busy with that. We are only busy with the problem of explaining. Yes. How did this soul, infinite existence, consciousness, and bliss admit into itself that which is pain, not bliss, not delight? Because all delight must be all good. Then how did evil come into that all good? How they came and how can they persist in life? Then is a second question that we have to make, second point which you have to make clear to our mind is that the world we live in is not an ethical world. Just as God is not extra cosmic person who is away from the cosmos, the world in which we live is not an ethical world. Look back on the cosmos and you will see that there is no ethics below the human, range. Even in the human range, ethics is relative. Ethics for the human being is only a temporary stage to be passed through. But ethics is not the aim of the world we live in is not an ethical world. World of force, yes, if you like. Therefore, we should not try to put an ethical meaning into this world. Otherwise, we won't get the true answer. Man reads himself into the world and therefore wants to find ethical values. And this prevents him from seeing the solution of the problem. For instance, material nature is not ethical. Electricity comes and strikes. No ethical consideration. The tornado arises and destroys things. Not moral. Earthquake, storms. Well, it's not ethical at all. Only force which acts either creates or destroys. You see? Well, the animal is non-ethical. You can see that very clearly, is it not? The whole animal world is non-ethical. You don't blame the tiger for killing the deer. Well, if it didn't kill, it would die. So you say, poor fellow is pressed to do what he does. You understand? The animal world is not ethical. Yes, he shows how belts of this cosmos are not at all subject to the problem of ethics. And therefore, to the whole of the ethics to give an ethical meaning would be an exaggeration. That's all. Ethics has a place. We don't say ethics is nonsensical. But that to say that the whole of this must be governed by an ethical value would be to not to look at the true direction in which the problem solution can be found. Yes, the animal world is non-ethical, and we don't blame the tiger for killing the deer. But ethics begins with blame. You see, it springs from recoil generally. Ethics begin in the primary stage from fear and recoil. You see, from the victim fears the aggressor, and then it feels that this aggression is bad. That's how it begins, you see. The whole is a result of recoil of the nervous system and fear. Well, Well, self-expression and self-development is a play of conscious force of existence, which is equal to light. And what hurts and what helps man is both ethical and non-ethical. Ethics can help, what is non-ethical also can help the man. Man is helped in his process of self-expression and self-development, not only by ethics, but that which is not ethical can help, and also ethics can help. Ethics is only a stage in man's evolution. The urge of this truth consciousness is towards self-expression, and that is common to all the stages. The urge towards self-expression is non-ethical, infra-ethical, anti-ethical. That is how you see it is below ethics, then it is, you see, anti-ethical, then ethical. It is only a means by which it struggles out of the lower harmony, the consciousness developing out of the animal level into man, goes through the infra-ethical, anti-ethical, ethical stages in order that the lower harmony of sensation, impulse, desire, ego, selfishness can be turned into a little higher harmony. It is not that the world has to become all ethical, but that man is helped out of his lower harmony. He struggles out of the lower harmony and universality based upon inconscience, life of discourse toward a higher harmony based upon oneness, conscious perception of aims and ideals. Therefore, the solution of the problem is not ethical, because ethics, as we see, is only a temporary stage. A temporary stage in the growth of man towards a condition which can be called supra-ethical. World has three layers as we see it: infra-ethical, ethical, supra-ethical. Infra-ethical, he has to outlive by organizing the ethical. What is infra-ethical in him is a lower harmony which puts him on a par with the animals, with the inconscient world, and with the impulses, with what you call elemental movements of life force, desires, instincts. Well, from that infra-ethical stage, man, by evolution of ethics, works out a higher harmony. But it is to prepare for a supra-ethical ascension, supra-ethical development towards the higher than ethical harmony. The common element is delight. Seeking new forms of experiences, well, you say that there in that scheme, how does pain or evil fit in? Well, pain or evil comes in as a contrary movement of delight. It's a negative aspect of delight felt by man, but it is delight. It is because man's whole receptive organism is relative. He cannot, as we saw, that he cannot adjust himself to certain vibrations. Well, then those vibrations make him feel either pleasure or pain, not an all pervading universal delight. He must have in his organism, from the normal vibration, something that takes him up, which is pleasure, something that takes him down, then he calls it pain. But the all pervading universal vibration, he does not feel, he feels it as indifference, which is really delight. The delight is present, but man has so accustomed himself to that delight and takes it for so much for granted that something more of the vibration must come, and then he would feel this is pleasure. If it goes in the other direction, he feels this is pain. But the constant running of it on a level, he never feels it as if it was universal delight or bliss. No. As we saw in the last chapter that consciousness is different and much wider than mental consciousness. So this delight of which we are speaking now as an element of the being and consciousness, this delight is quite different from pleasure and pain. Because pleasure and pain attach themselves to mental consciousness. Whereas this delight is not a result of a mental consciousness. It's an attribute of an omnipresent reality, an infinite being, an infinite consciousness. It is not as it were to the human consciousness, it must have the same values for pleasure and pain as man has got. Therefore, we, in our analysis of the understanding of this vast consciousness, we saw that it is different and independent of mental consciousness. In the same way, the bliss of which we speak is quite different from man's perception or experience of pleasure, pain, or neutral indifference. There are occasional and limited moments of that delight. Pain and pleasure or neutral indifference in man are only occasional and limited movements confined to mental consciousness of man. Delight is universal and self existent. Delight of being and delight of becoming. Well, it moves in the movement of force and takes different forms. Pleasure and pain also are positive and negative forms of the current of delight. The current of delight flows, and man feels it at one stage in his experience, either as pleasure and pain, though it is only a self existent universal bliss. In matter, it is subconscious, and in the superconscious, it is beyond mind. And we seek objects in order to have pleasure. Is it not? Man seeking of this delight is seeking of pleasure. And we seek objects, and this pleasure that it can give is transient. The satisfaction it can give is only temporary and passing. When we are free, then we shall not seek to possess objects, because the delight will possess the whole world. And then there will not be compulsion to possess object in order to experience delight or pleasure. In the human ego, that is in the mental being, delight of existence is either neutral and semi-latent, covered by his desires. This bliss that comes to man gets covered by his impulse of desire and possession. Because he thinks, if I have, I will have pleasure. So the bliss that is there comes to man, and man projects upon it his desire. Then it gets covered, and then it gets the form of pleasure, pain, or neutral indifference. That is how in udasinta, or pleasure and pain. If he can awaken in him the divine fire of conscious will for the delight, then the fire can burn up all the roots of his desire. And when the roots of his desire are burnt up, then the sap of delight will be felt by man. Then one will feel the existence of this infinite delight and bliss. It will emerge. And sensations and emotions are the essential being this delight. All sensation that you get is really the sensation of that delight. But because it is subjected to the process of desire, it ceases to be delight. Otherwise, it would be bliss to look out. Simply to look out would be such a bliss that you won't stand the impact of it. If you really get into it, you can't stand the impact. It is tremendous. It is so much that you are overcome. You feel drowned and you feel, oh, you can't hold your feet. It is tremendous. It is enough. But the sensation itself is an act of bliss, he says. Not only sensation, but all emotion is the bliss rushing into man. And if he can get into that bliss, which is every sensation, he will find the world is absolute bliss. To make all sensation and all emotion, well, it has to be purified by that fire of which he spoke. All egoistic desire and impulse and to possess and selfishness and greed and desire and all that has to be burnt. Well, then only the purity of sensation is attained, the purity of emotional being is attained, and then you can see that what comes is not the vibration of the object, but rather the delight that is in the object. And that is what man can and does experience in his aesthetic life, in his art. You see, if you have even a little touch of the artistic temperament, then the mystery of the world becomes an approach to this delight. Because then a flower ceases to be an insignificant thing manifesting for 2 hours and then, dying away. Then you find that the flower is expression of a delight. And when it comes to man with his sensation, it is to convey to him that delight of universal existence, of which it is only a very minor, infinitesimal expression, but it is surcharged with the whole of the delight. And when you can enter into that, you find that the delight is enormous, unbearable. You cannot bear the delight. For behind the flower is the drive of the whole bliss of that infinite existence and consciousness. And how much is that when you know in expression, then you feel as if you see you can't keep your senses in order. If you allow that to overpower you, you will see that in every smallest thing that is the delight that is flowing and expressing itself. Well, the sensation and the emotion have to be purified. Only they fail to reveal the delight because of our division and egoism. Well, when that is gone, then the delight will be felt as constant experience of world movement.
Is it possible that the insects with our vibration and animals with our instinct and man with its soul, the entire universe is striving to become aware of absolute truth?
Of course.
And the evolution of trees and everything will go beyond what they are.
Yes, it might go.
And they will not be trees, but something else in the higher stages.
Yes, it can one day. And even now, when the consciousness rises to the superconscious, then trees will cease to be what they are now. They will cease to be what they are now. Then they will become very conscious expression of some universal truth, being and delight and consciousness. Not only that, but in them you can also have a communication with the world and with the trees. And then you can know what they mean. Oh yes. One mother's prayer is very fine, in which she says that when she was in Japan, she saw that the trees were rising up because they wanted to open themselves to the higher light, and they were trying to aspire to the light, you see. And it was the expression of their aspiration that this upward movement was undertaken by the vegetable world, you see. Yes. What is it?
Well, I don't know whether to say yes or not, because it's rather personal. But I think in childhood we all experience this delight so much that we don't know whether we're in this body or not.
Yes.
It's so over.
Oh yes, it
so
can
marvelous.
Be. Yes.
And we lose that. We lose that place. We lose that light. I had it so powerful that I would wake up in the morning before anybody was awake, and I'd see great vistas of light.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
I lived in. I thought it was normal. Then I lost it.
Oh, well, you can get back either the vision itself or the result of the vision, the change of consciousness. You see, vision is only a promise. It's only a promise, and it shows what you can experience, and if you are capable, you can make the experience normal. Vision is not something abnormal. It is abnormal when it comes, but it's a signpost pointing to the place up to which you can march. And if you can march up to that, that the result of the vision can become constant. So it can become a state of consciousness afterwards.
Doesn't this very vision sometimes bring on an acceleration?
Yes, it does.
Impulse?
Yes.
So that often, as you said, you lose it. I also
Yeah.
lost it. But isn't it from partly because we have then the oppositions in our nature?
No, it's not
Or
that.
what is it?
It's not only that. You see, it is the consciousness is there and the aspiration is here. Now, that which is working knows the aspiration and it gives a promise. You see, it unfolds a you can say a pilgrimage, a path of pilgrimage. You see, it puts before you a stage, an étage, as they say in French. You see, a stage here, and then the stage is covered over. You have then to walk, and make your way to that stage. That's all. That is the meaning of it. That is the only significant. That is happens in hundreds of cases I have known, not one or two. So that is normal. In spiritual life, a very great higher state is revealed to the aspirant almost in the beginning sometimes when he just opened because he is very sincere at the time when one begins. All his difficulties are there, but the best part of him is out. You see, and when the very highest of his psychic being is open, then the light also comes and responds and immediately gives him the stage that here this is possible. Then it is covered over. Then what he has to do is to struggle with his nature, prepare it, purify it, widen it, enlighten it, be sincere, put it as the first priority of life and pursue it sincerely. Well, then he will go to that which was revealed to him. Then a further stage will be revealed if necessary. You see, it's like that. Yes.
I had an experience once that explained the principle of pleasure and pain.
Hmm.
Was I'd been on an outing and I was quite susceptible to poison ivy, so I had poison ivy. I was completely covered with it.
Poison ivy.
Poison ivy is the poison.
Oh yes,
that we
plant.
have.
A rash.
Oh yes, yes.
And if I get it, it completely covers me. It just spreads all over me.
Hmm.
And so I was waiting for some people that was bringing me some medicine to doctor with.
Hmm.
And so I spent maybe half the day in a great desire to scratch this or everything, but I knew that I could not do it, so I had to restrain
Control yourself, and then you found it was delight.
And then I finally got the medicine, and the way this medicine is applied is you take a hot shower,
Hmm.
and after the hot shower, this hot shower breaks the little blisters, and then you spread this medicine and it dries it up. So I went to take my hot shower, and I had the water very hot. And I started to step under the shower, and the water was hot. So I jumped back because of the heat caused pain.
Hmm.
But at the same moment, I realized that the heat, the pain that I felt as pain, was the same sensation that I received from scratching.
Hmm.
And when I realized this, I stepped into the hot water and got the relief that I wanted to scratch all day long. I got this from the hot water that just an instant before I had felt as pain was now pleasure.
Yeah.
And so it's I realized that
It is
pain
relative.
is
You see, it's a relative. There is a scale, you see, between this. Now that is can move up, move down like that. Here is pleasure, here is pain. Go up, here is pleasure, here is pain. Like that, it simply goes up or goes down. It's a scale because it's limited by the capacity of sensation and perception and emotion. Well, when the consciousness is widened out into the higher range or higher plane, then that range becomes cosmic. Then there is not that small limited. Even this limited apparatus of mind and sense is used by that vast and infinite consciousness as only an indication. So that when you touch a sensation or object through the sense, you know that this is only an excuse for that to work here and show that this is not here, but it is here. It is all here. You see, and here only a little jet of it is thrown to show to man and to animal, well, that life is also delight. That is what man is. You see, man's pleasures, when you say delight, if you analyze, you will see that he is not able to maintain the delight that is given to him. Take only taste. A certain kind of food gives him great delight. The capacity to take food is limited. Yes, so then what he realizes is that yes, this delight is only a jet of that infinite delight. And if you can get into that, then this taste that comes will be only a symbol, only a little point of representing for the just a sample. But really, what is at work is that then every taste will become equally acceptable, equally enjoyable. Then you will say, I don't like this, will go away. Everything you will like, which anybody likes in the world. You see, the limitation of taste, that this taste I prefer, this nothing. Everything is a universal taste in it. Rasa is there for everything. So a thing in which I remember Sri Aru's incident in his life. You see, the boys had gone out for looking at fire walking near village in Madras. Near Pondicherry, there is a village where firewalking takes place, and the boys who waited on Sri Aurobindo in 1914, 15, and 16, they went out for seeing that. And so Amrita was quite young at that time, 14 or 15 or 16 perhaps. And he was left in charge that you see that at 12 o'clock you give him food and this and that and so on. So Amrita completely forgot. He began to read the book, and boy, just say, after all, you can't hold a boy responsible for anything. So he went on reading. Sri time for food passed, but it never occurred to him to say whether my food is ready. No, he went on walking and meditating all the time. And then suddenly Amrita realized at 3 o'clock, you forgot. So he said, oh, I forgot. Oh, it's all right. Then he said, food is ready. Yes, they came, took his food. Then 2 or 3 days in the evening, there was no salt in the curry. So everybody went on eating, including Sri Aurobindo went on eating. On the third day, somebody said that in the curry there is no salt. Sri Aurobindo says, in the curry there is no salt. The curry, there is no salt, that's all. But they staggered that why he didn't say on the first day that there is nothing of the kind. He says without salt, that has a taste of its own, and that is enjoyable. Equally, delight is there. Without salt, there is delight. With salt, there is delight, and there is no point in saying that it must be only this way. That's how we actually saw it work in him. And I learned a great deal.
Saying the truth does not change it.
Huh?
Saying the truth does not change it.
One of our English classic poets wrote lines that reminded me of what you were saying. We look before and after.
And pine for what is not, our sincerest pleasures. Oh, yes.
And that's so true.
Yes. It is Shelley, is it not?
Yes.
Shelley, yes.
But it's probably speaking out from
Yes. Art, you get the delight from the tragic, you see?
Yes, I took your book. I want to read it so much.
Yes, you see.
Because my life is bound up in art, right?
Yes, you see. The enjoyment of tragic, for instance, is the instance in point to show that the universal delight is felt in that sorrow. In the tragic. Yes, you don't go through any suffering, but you get the enjoyment, the delight of that suffering. And then you know that, yes, tragic is not only suffering, tragic is delight. Isn't it? That's how, otherwise people won't go to see a tragic drama or tragic scene. No, the enjoyment in tragic is there. That shows the presence of the delight. And that is why art is a great ally of spiritual life, you see, because art opens one to that aspect of beauty of that infinite existence, consciousness, and bliss, which is a very, very great expression of it, the highest of it, so to say. But people are blind and they never see beauty, and then they get wedded to intellectual theory, and then they go to the subconscious and want to express in art the lower elements of human consciousness and think they are very original and creating something marvelous and wonderful and new because nobody did it, and whatever is new must be therefore beautiful, and so on, so on, so on. Well, that is where we get away from the path. But if one keeps straight to the perception of beauty as the seeking for the artistic impulse, then I think he is on a very straight path for spiritual life also, because that is what spiritual life stands for.
Well, isn't our attitude towards suffering a means of growth? Our attitude towards suffering is also a means.
Yes, no, suffering itself can contribute to a growth. What people call suffering, if it is rightly taken, well, it is certainly tends to growth. Certainly, it gives a good sort of formation of inner being, and if it is rightly, tackled, means reacted correctly from the spiritual point of view, then it's a very great gain.
It gives birth to aspiration.
No, to an understanding of life, first of all. A very great understanding of life comes, and then you understand that it is only a way of reaction to certain circumstances in the human consciousness, which means that they must change. By suffering, one is only exerting or trying to exert will or pressure on the environment or circumstances to change them.
Thomas Hardy says that
Yes.
it's the life that matters, it's the courage.
Huh?
It's the courage, is what you say.
No, attitude. You see, it's an attitude. The attitude is, you see, when a man takes it egoistically on himself, then the pressure of suffering is the greatest. When he can look upon it as impersonal and try to learn from it, well, the pressure of it is minimum and his effect on the circumstances is maximum. When a man puts himself in his small ego and takes the whole burden of suffering, it is the pressure of the conditions that have created suffering have the greatest effect on him. If he can look upon it as impersonal and put the question to himself, what have I to learn from this? How has this come? And why has this come? Well, when he puts this question, why has this come, impersonally, and says, what have I to learn from it? Then the pressure of the circumstances that have created suffering becomes less. And his effect on the environment or circumstance becomes maximum. Probably it tends to change it also. When he becomes impersonal, his pressure becomes so effective sometimes that it can change. He is not out for change only, he is only wanting to learn. And when he has learned, probably the circumstance disappears because that was for that only it came. It comes only for a purpose and it disappears when the purpose is over. And when you don't take it egoistically, it has no meaning and significance in repeating itself.
In the way of the privilege, man.
Yes, only Sri Aurobindo would say, don't invite, because uninvited you will get enough of it. Uninvited, you will get enough of it. Because that is also a perversity, according to him, to indulge in suffering. There are people who take delight in it. That is wrong.
Hair shirts that
No, not at all. That is a perversity. That is a sort of a distortion of the true attitude. True attitude is to be equal. Samata, as they say in Gita, samatvam, equanimity. If it comes, you take it without too much personal. Try to learn, be impersonal and equanimity. Samata, equality. Not going under, not enjoying or running after, but you take it. Yes, this has come, now let me see what to make of it. That's all. What have I to learn from it? Then one gets the maximum spiritual benefit and also the highest possible materially. I'm sure about it because forces immediately act. You see?
in the Zen Buddhists, they're so very daring.
Oh, yes.
But isn't that also another way of distorting?
Yes, Zen Buddhism is a very limited approach to the problem of man's fulfillment. It is a solution, but it's a very limited solution because all its attitude, so far as now, the current Zen Buddhism, I don't know what it must have been its origin, but current Buddhism is more or less overburdened by a sort of a aesthetic outlook and also a justification of the present as the as the only possible thing to be attained and so on. I